Without a doubt, my favourite film franchise of all time, and actually my favourite film of all time, is Ridley Scott's masterpiece Alien. And I thought with the auteur's upcoming return to that very universe in which he created with Prometheus, the quote unquote supposed alien prequel, I thought it'd be a good time to look back at not just my favourite film, Ridley Scott's original, but the whole Alien franchise as a whole, the whole saga, the whole caboot, as they say. So this is going to be a study into how a franchise can start off with an incredible and immense artistic a bang of artistic integrity, uh, and then to slowly but and gradually descend into the pits of mediocrity, and eventually more or less wind up on the trash heap. Um, Sort of the trash heap that's labelled as being a commercially orientated fiasco, a mere hollow shell of its once glorious self. It's a bit of a lengthy title for a trash heap, but I was never one for metaphors, I suppose. But with all my heart, I'm hoping, praying that Prometheus will be the return to form for the series. It will rescue the fictional universe, which I personally hold very dear to my heart. Like I said, Alien's my favourite film, and revive this once magnificent series of films. Let's kick off this retrospective with Alien. Now, I'm not going to delve too much into the general plot of the films, especially regarding the first two, because I think by now everyone and their grandmother more or less knows the story of Alien and the whole life cycle thing that goes on with them. So let's look at the first film, and I'll try to put a reasoning upon what it is that I admire so much about that original '79 classic. Let's start with the story of Alien. The basic overriding story of Alien is actually fairly pedestrian, really. I mean, it's essentially a B movie monster flick that just happens to be set in space. I believe the creators, possibly Ridley Scott, said it was a haunted house feature, which is really quite true. But it's so artfully done that it's carried off with aplomb. But it's easy to forget the revolutionary aspect of just how out there the life cycle of this creature, the alien creature, was back in the late '70s. Uh, it was inspired by the real life process of the parasitic wasp on Earth, and it's just such a creepy kind of concept to use for a horror. And since then, it's always been used time and time again by multiple films. I was watching the other day Frank Darabont's The Mist on DVD, and I noticed the spider creature in that is, it's a right riff on the whole alien life cycle. So it's just, and that's just one example. It's just the most recent one in my memory. But you know, the back in the late '70s, this was new. This wasn't something that was standard. It was shocking, and it's no surprise to me to hear that people were running out to the theatres and upon its initial screenings, and in some extreme cases actually throwing up. It is, people may a younger generation, and I wasn't born actually. I was born '82. I wasn't born when the original Alien came out, but certainly a younger than me generation might not appreciate how revolutionary that was back then. Um, and it's a film, Alien, that's just stuffed with sort of things that make it hold up to a repeat viewing. For example, you can take it on face value the first time you see it, but then upon repeat viewings, you may pick up, for example, upon the sexual themes that seem to run throughout, particularly the first Alien. And that's from the face hugger, which essentially rapes John Hurt's character of. I'm supposed to be an alien geek and drawing a blank. Kane, for God's sake, Kane. John Hurt's character, Kane, is essentially a rape, and then him giving birth to the creature. And then the great H.R. Giger's visual contribution, which includes the adult xenomorph with its phallic head. I mean, that's just full-on sexual imagery. The entrance to the derelict's craft in the first Alien, very vaginal. The vents or whatever they're supposed to be on the derelicts that the crew enter through. It's all layered through with sexual themes, down to really subtle stuff that you really need multiple viewings to even begin to pick up on. The way Lambert's killed in Alien, it's sort of suggested that there's something almost sexual, because you only hear it off screen. And Ridley Scott's talked about it. It's suggested there's some kind of almost rape. It's very disturbing and fascinating for repeat viewings. Ultimately, another one being of the sexual themes in Alien, in the shuttle at the end. Ripley's undressed, Reddy's going to hypersleep, and the alien's then there, and she's undressed, and the alien looks at her and extends its tongue in her mouth, which is, again, a sort of phallic symbol towards this naked woman. And that doesn't mean in the literal sense in terms of the movie, but just in terms of, the subtleties and the suggestions and the metaphors that the film brings up. Aside from the sexual elements of metaphors within the film, there's also subtle elements to look for elsewhere for repeat viewings. For example, knowing, as you do once you watch the film, which I'm assuming everyone has, I'm not doing spoiler warnings here, it's a 79 film, it's a classic. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to apologise for spoiling it, you should have watched it by now at the end of the day. But Ian Holm playing Ash, once you know who his character is, and you go back and watch it for the second or third or fourth time, you can watch the subtlety of his performance as he's before his reveal of who he really is, and it's all there on screen. But it's so subtle that the first time viewing, you don't even see that there's anything really odd about his character initially. It's quite clever. In terms of the visual aspects of the film, then, it's like, not only is Alien my favourite film of all time, but Ridley Scott's my favourite director, and I personally adore his visual sense. I love the way he captures seemingly reality, and also at the same time, almost fairy tale look to his visuals. I just think that's, for me, it's just what, if I was making films, I had his talent, I wish, but if I did, that's what I'd be making. I think that's, to me, it's the perfect look. So visually, of course, I adore Alien. I just love that juxtaposition of reality and fairy tale that he infuses. As much as Ridley Scott provides a lot of the visual appeal in Alien through his direction, it's also worth really putting a lot of credit towards Ron Cobb, who provided the interiors of the Nostromo, all the human earth-bound technology. Ron Cobb did a lot of that, and it's a great look. It's it's an oil refinery or a submarine in space. These interiors, I think it's wonderfully claustrophobic and just totally suitable for what the film is as a horror, claustrophobic horror. Also, of course, H.R. Giger I mentioned before. You know, I'm assuming people know who that is. The great artist. Again, as much as Ridley Scott is my favourite director of all time, H.R. Giger is my favourite artist of all time. So it's hardly surprising that I adore this film as much as I do. I guess, you know, it's just some of the talent behind it, and you know, Dan O'Bannon, Dark Star, Return of the Living Dead, films I love. You know, a great writer, sadly passed on now. Uh, you know, I'll just say, as a film, the first Alien is almost flawless in as much as a film can be, or anything can be. Nothing's perfect, nothing is, but it's almost flawless. I can only think of two moments in the film where it kind of movie doesn't come across so great in this day and age. Those moments being the chest burster scene after it comes out of John Hurt on the dinner table and it's scuttling across the table. I'm a big fan of practical effects, but these days it's something you'd at least you can CGI to modify and look a little bit more fluid and a little bit less silly than it does these days. It's like I was watching a film with a friend the other day, and one of my friend's friends was around with her and myself, and she'd never seen Alien before. She's about my age. I'm 28. She's about my age, and she'd never seen it before, which you know I found interesting. I just thought it was one of those things. Like everyone's seen Alien, right? But I guess not. So it was interesting for me to see her watching it for the first time in today's world. You know, not back in the 80s or you know whatever, or when it first came out, 79. And yeah, it holds up. It held up. It freaked her out. The face hugger and tightening on its tail around Kane's neck. That freaked her out. And but yeah, the chestburster scuttling across the table made her giggle, and also the alien at the end when it's ultimately kind of revealed and when it's blasted out the shuttle to just be a man in a suit, a man in a rubber suit. Yeah, she giggled at that as well, but she enjoyed it overall. And you know, it's something that never really occurred to me before because I grew up watching this film. I've never giggled at those scenes because I guess it's just so engraved in my memory from growing up. But it was interesting to see someone who's watching it in today's world for the first time and see that I guess those elements have dated a bit. Yeah, I guess that kind of brings us around to the last aspect or major aspect of the film, which would be sound design. And I've got to say, the sound in Alien is impeccable. Right from you know the soundtrack through to the special effects, sound effects. Jerry Goldsmith's score is, I think, in turns both haunting and disturbing, rousing when it needs to be. It just serves the film so well. And the interesting thing about these sound effects is, you know, no one really ever notices, and I didn't for a long time, the sound effects of the alien creature itself in Ridley Scott's original film. They're very odd sounds that blend with the score, with Jerry Goldsmith's score, so you don't really notice that's the alien making those sounds. And it's not something that Cameron followed up in with Aliens. He created a different sound, but I thought sound design in Aliens was fantastic as well. Sound effects for the aliens just great, but that is what they more or less stuck with from then on. So Ridley Scott's original Alien doesn't sound like it does in the later films. It's very weird and very suitably alien sound for this creature to be making. Overall, there's not going to be much of a surprise here, but 5 out of 5 Lambert to the slaughter. That's Alien. Next up, Aliens.